his deck, he has a lot of game. And he's counting on making up for those percentages in games 2 and 3, where he gets much more efficient answers to what Brian's doing, while Brian can't really sideboard that many cards because he has to keep the core of his deck intact.
Yeah. As for Stoneblade, you know, Legacy is a format oftentimes that can have swing. If you're someone who just plays Standard, Legacy can have swingier matchups than you would expect. You know, Legacy truly has 80-20 matchups in the format, whereas that's something you rarely find in a format like Standard. I think Esper Stoneblade is a deck that players would want to play if they want to avoid. If you want to have a deck that has at least 40% against just about anything, Esper Stoneblade's a pretty good choice.
Yeah.
So, and we are underway. This is going to be a pretty quick start here. Max has the turn 1 Thoughtseize, and we'll get to see what he's facing against out of the Ant deck. It's going to be 2 lands, so an Underground Sea and a fetch land. Infernal Tutor, Tendrils of Agony, Lotus Petal, another Infernal Tutor, and a Ponder.
And again, for those of you who are relatively new to this format, Infernal Tutor are a critical piece of this deck. It tries to empty its hand either through just simply playing all of its cards and using effects like Dark Ritual, or it can play Lion's Eye Diamond, cast Infernal Tutor, and in response to the Lion's Eye Diamond trigger, or effect rather, cast Infernal Tutor, cast Infernal Tutor and then sack Lion's Eye Diamond in response to that to have an empty hand, and tutor for Past in Flames or Ad Nauseam as appropriate.
So what Max found there is that Brian's hand had a lot of setup, but not a lot of speed. He had a pair of Infernal Tutors and a Ponder, so he was going to be able to find the pieces he wants for his combo, but you'd have to go through the work to find them. So Max just took the Ponder, which I think is the right pick. What that'll do is it'll make Brian take the longest amount of time to find his combo pieces.
So Max with a pretty good hand for the matchup. Again, he started off with a Thoughtseize. He has Force of Will plus a blue card in hand. And he has a Stoneforge Mystic, which will allow him to start pressuring Brian. So a good mixture of disruption and pressure, which is what you need to fight these combo decks.
Yeah, he knows that Brian's turn 2 is very possibly just going to be Infernal Tutor to find a duplicate card and pass back. So this is the nice window for Max to resolve Stoneforge, finding some sort of equipment. It looks like it's going to be sort of Fire Ice. Max really only needs to make 1 threat here, and then he can sit back on counter spells for the rest of the game. And because, you know, of the power level of things like Stoneforge and Legacy, 1 threat will be enough to win the game. Also, Brian has no answers to permanents on the board. So we see that Stoneforge finding Sword. And he'll pass back to Brian. In the remaining turns, he has drawn an LED and a Lotus Petal since we last saw his hand.
So he has a lot of explosion right now.
Right, he's going to fetch on turn 2. He may just go for an Infernal Tutor to set up a little more. He does have a lot. He has a lot of mana. I do not believe he has a combo hand right now. He could go for it, but he would be playing into losing to Force of Will at the moment.
And often these Ad Nauseam decks, they have some amount of discard, duresses, and Cabal therapies are featured in the main deck of Brian's. Primarily, these are to fight through Force of Will. It is definitely the most prevalent card that causes decks like Storm to struggle.
Right.
A lot of their hands don't even allow them to really play around Force of Will. They simply have to go for it.
This is just a setup Infernal Tutor. He's going to go show a Lion's Eye Diamond, which means he has to get another Lion's Eye Diamond. Remember, he can't. This means next turn he'll hope to go Petal, Petal, Diamond, Diamond, cast Infernal Tutor, dump his hand with that on the stack, and then go ahead and combo from there. He is still weak to that Force of Will, though, that's in Max's hand.
Brian would really like to find a Cabal therapy or duress in his next draw step. I mean, he might be under enough pressure here where he might feel like he should just be going for it next turn, in which case the Force of Will potentially be ruinous.
Yeah, he could have, if he really wanted to go, to the wall, he could have gone for both Infernal Tutors that game, but then, yeah, he would have found the LED. He could have played both Petals right now to cast a second Infernal Tutor and crack both LEDs and go ahead and just try to combo from there. But like I said, that would be just dead to a Force of Will.
And Brian's got a little bit of time here. He doesn't have to. I mean, he has to start getting the ball rolling kind of soon. Oh,
what a draw!
And he's just found a duress. So we might see some real fireworks this turn.
I mean, you should imagine he'll lead out on duress, and if he sees the coast is clear, this is a pretty easy hand to win from Brian. He will walk you through it though. So the goal, he has a Tendrils of Agony in hand. His goal is to have 9 spells be cast and then cast that Tendrils this turn. Really just 8 spells because Max is at 17. Spell number 1 is going to be Duress. He's going to get to see what see what's in Max's hand. Max with, we know Force of Will, blue card, and Sword of Fire Ice.
Yeah.
Not sure of how much additional disruption he has. Looks like the blue card is True Name Nemesis.
I believe he also has a Brainstorm in hand as well.
So he could use Brainstorm to, it's kind of a hard situation. He can use Brainstorm to hide a card. We do see, yeah, Brainstorm, Force of Will, True Name Nemesis, Swords to Plowshares, card in, as you said, the Game 1 issue, and Sword of Fire and Ice.
So the likelihood here for Brian to do is to take Force of Will out of this hand and basically put Max to the test, force him to find another counterspell in the top 3 cards with that Brainstorm.
All right, so here we go. That is spell number 1. Number 2 is a Lotus Petal. Number 3 is a Lotus Petal. And this is, I said, an easy storm if you can get it. Number 4 is Lion's Eye Diamond. Number 5 is Lion's Eye Diamond. Number 6 is going to be this Infernal Tutor that's in his hand. And because the Tendrils in his deck is in his hand, he's going to have to go for a Past in Flames of some sort so that he can cast it again. Number 6 is Infernal Tutor. With that on the stack, he's going to go ahead and sack a Lion's Eye Diamond. And both the Lion's Eye Diamonds. We'll see what colors he's making right now. So he already has cast 6 spells here. He doesn't have to find much. He can just find Past in Flames, Duress, and then re-flash back that Infernal Tutor. This is, I think, the point where Max brainstorms.
Yeah. Brian has nothing left in the tank after this, so if Max is able to stop this Infernal Tutor, it's going to be incredibly hard for Brian to go off a second time.
Yeah, but it really just has to be Counterspell, the one-up Counterspell, or Force of Will. You know, any sort of spell pierce effects, Brian has far too much mana for that to work.
Yeah. So Max didn't find a counterspell, but he did find another Brainstorm, which in conjunction with his fetch land will allow him to look at 3 more cards.
Yeah, he can dig exactly 1 card deeper. Oh, no, he does have a
He
fetch
gets
land.
a totally fresh, yeah, he gets a
He has
fresh.
3 more cards. However, now he's on Force of Will or Bust. He can't, the Counterspell no longer will work because he doesn't have the mana for it. There are 3 more copies of Force of Will in his deck, however.
In a lot of Esper Stoneblade lists, you'll see something like 2 Force of Wills or 3 Force of Wills with additional copies in the sideboard. Max is playing the full 4, and it's certainly for matchups like this.
Yeah, and you'd said combo really, you know, the last 2 opens have been won by unfair decks. I think it's a reasonable thing to be playing 4 Force of Wills right now.
Force of Will is definitely a stable card, and many newer players of the format assume it's sort of a sacred cow. There's no way you play less than 4 in your blue decks, but there's a lot of matchups against other honest decks where Force of Will is actually pretty inefficient.
Yeah, Force of Will is not, what is it? One of the secret things about Force of Will, or maybe not so secret in Legacy, is that Force of Will is actually not a very good card, except when it's excellent.
Yeah.
You know, here it is the card, but in other matchups, it's pretty weak. We see True Name Nemesis, we see land, we see another True Name Nemesis. Max is not going to find the Force of Will, and Infernal Tutor resolves.
Right.
Which means it's Demonic Tutor, and this should be pretty academic from here. So remember, this was because Max cast 2 Brainstorms, that was spell 7 and 8 of the turn.
Yeah.
So Brian actually just needs to find Fast in Flames. And yes, because it's Demonic Tutor, he does not have to show the card, but he will show it momentarily.
The secret will be revealed, although it appears he went for Ad Nauseam. It's possible he didn't add red mana to his mana pool because he...
Well, yeah, he still does have an
he
uncracked
does
Lotus
have-
Petal,
yeah,
though.
yeah.
So, I mean, with the amount of mana he has, well, let's see, he has 6 mana, 7 mana, so yeah, he's gonna go for Ad Nauseam. Yeah, he actually is short on being able to just,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, he's short on being able to make that the
But
play.
he certainly has a lot of life to work with off of this Ad
Yeah.
Nauseam.
So 1, 2, 3, so he has plenty of mana right now. 4, now remember, he's losing life for each mana cost he's flipping over here, so, and there is always a chance when you Ad Nauseam that you kill yourself doing it,
Yes.
which is why you try to not Ad Nauseam whenever possible.
Yeah, Past in Flames has definitely given this deck a more stable, not life total dependent kill.
Yeah, well, the best part for Brian here is if he gets to a life total, which he thinks is too risky. He can actually stop ad nauseuming. Max doesn't really have him dead next turn either. He sees no fetch land, and Max just put 2 cards back on Brainstorm. Next turn should probably safe to continue a combo. So down to 9. He does have to watch out because Max can swing for 5 next turn, thanks to Sword of Fire and Ice. So Brian's getting to the point where he has to be careful. Down to 7 right now. Still has not. He's found plenty of tools to work with. Plenty of mana, plenty of cantrips. Not much blue mana. Yeah, I think he stopped at just about the right spot here. Kano has 1. Down to 6. 1 black in his mana pool. Thanks to the 3, or I believe maybe even 4 Dark Rituals he's found, he has plenty of black mana.
And all this simply complicated by the fact that he drew the Tendrils of Agony. This would be elementary if
he hadn't drawn the Tendrils. He just would have Infernal Tutored 4 Tendrils and won. So Brian, now that he's gone below 5, he's going to have to try to win this turn. Yeah, he is, because that Stoneforge will be lethal. Well, I guess it can't get sorted up. It probably can't get sorted up this turn. Okay. So Stoneforge can only swing for 1. I don't know if there's... I don't think Max actually has a way to sneak in that damage. Because Max only has 1 mana up, not 2 right now.
I think Max was asking to see the contents of his hand, and Brian said, don't worry about it, I'll just play face up for you.
Yeah. So, yeah, plenty of black mana. A lot of... He mostly just has mana sources, blue cantrips. Yeah, blue cantrips and black mana sources. He would have loved to have found some more Lotus Petals. He did find another LED that's not exactly a Lotus Petal. Or if he had found another Infernal Tutor to go with his LED, that also would have worked.
Yeah, with the amount of mana that's in his pool, it's a real struggle for him to cast these cantrips.
All right, so he's going to play his Ion for the turn so that he can ponder. He did not find the Infernal Tutor, so he's going to go ahead and shuffle. See, not many cards to shuffle left, only about 15 to 20 cards in his deck.
He has a Gitaxian Probe he can all cast as another shot at it. Any Lotus Petal he draws allows him to cast another cantrip.
Draw off Ponder, no help there. Now we can see what he wants to hang on to. We'll see. Starts with Lotus Petal likely going to cast. He can cast another cantrip with it here. I'm not sure, even if he finds what he's looking for, how helpful that is.
Yeah, at this point he needs to brainstorm into multiple pieces, right?
Yeah.
Or
so I think he's just setting up for next turn. We see Preordain, Infernal Tutor, and LED. All right, if he could take both of them. Now, the problem is he's out of mana. If he actually had 1 petal left, then he could Gitaxian Probe to 1.
He has that die over there. That might be a black floating.
If that's a black floating, then we're in business.
Yeah.
So, because he can Gitaxian Probe, and we'll watch it here. The black mana becomes 3 black mana, and you can tell that Brian knows he's found the combo. He kept both on top. More Dark Ritual to 5, now to 7. At this point, he's played about, well, more than enough spells.
A Cabal Ritual that's thresholded.
Right, so he has as much black mana as he could want. Gonna go for the Lion's Eye Diamonds in his hand. Yeah, he actually just drew the Infernal Tutor. Right. So
this allows him to make red mana off of the Lion's Eye Diamond, which allows him to then tutor for Past in Flames, which allows him to cast all this stuff all over again and cast his Tendrils for 40,000.
Right, so with 10 black mana, he's gonna go ahead and cast Infernal Tutor. With Infernal Tutor on the stack, sacks LED. This one's gonna be for red mana. Discards his whole hand. I can find any card, and that will be the one of Past in Flames. And he has enough mana to flashback to cast the Past in Flames out of hand. That's 4. Flashback Tendrils out of Agony with 4 more mana, and that will be enough.
So a little hairy there, but Brian Braun-Duin takes game 1 here. Probably a little tighter than he would have liked.
Yeah, and that's always one of the dangers about casting ad nauseum as opposed to just straight using the Past in Flames. There's always the potential to miss or to create situations that are a little more difficult than you would think than you would hope them to be.
So moving on the sideboard here, Brian, of course the way his deck is set up, he doesn't really have a lot of wiggle room. He needs to keep all of his rituals and all of his cantrips, so he has a couple sideboard cards he can bring in against a variety of opponents. 2 copies of Massacre. That's primarily for hate bears, I would imagine, like Meddling Mage and Gadok Teague that are white decks have that are difficult to get through. Thalia, another example. A copy of Duress, 2 Caracases, 2 Chain of Vapors, 3 Abrupt Decay, 3 Surgical Extraction, a Pyroclasm, and an Empty the Warrens. I would anticipate Massacre potentially coming in, as a lot of these Esper Blade decks have cards like Meddling Mage in it. It's not even unreasonable to see a Thalia or 2 out of the sideboard, and you may want the additional Duress as well, as this is a Force of Will matchup.
Yeah, I would assume the Massacre is coming in and that the Duress is coming in. Also, he may need Chain of Vapor in the matchup. It's not unreasonable that Max be boarding in Rest in Pieces, or even if he's just boarding in Meddling Mages, Chain of Vapor is pretty live there. It's kind of one of, I think, the standbys of Storm is that like Echoing Truth or Chain of Vapor typically comes in most matchups, and I think this one will be true also.
Yep.
On Max's side of the board, obviously things get better from post-board. He has a lot, as you said, has a few cards that win every matchup, and after board he can tune his deck accordingly. We saw that he drew Swords to Plowshares. That's not really very helpful. He has Supreme Verdicts in his deck. He has a lot of things that he really doesn't need. Things that are good, though, he has a Thought Seize, he has a Surgical Extraction, he has 2 Rest in Pieces, he has 2 Meddling Mages, a Flusterstorm, a Grafdigger's Cage, and a Vendilion Click, all of which I would expect to come in.
Yeah, so again, those sideboards look kind of random on the surface, but a lot of this is just trying to take out 5 or 6 inefficient cards that he has against nearly every opponent, replace them with 5 or 6 really efficient cards. If you're just joining us, Patrick Sullivan, Matthias Hunt, we are coming to you at round 3, our first round of coverage of the Legacy Open here in Baltimore. Braun-Duin and Max Teitze, 2 of our top-ranked players in the Season 1 standings, playing Brian with Ad Nauseam and Max with Esper Stoneblade.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the little bit of everything sideboard really is true in Legacy. Max right now, for example, has a 12-card sideboard. He has 3 2-ofs and the rest of them are 1-ofs. And it really is trying to make sure that he has a critical mass of cards for each matchup. For example, Flusterstorm's excellent here, but against, say, Show and Tell, Flusterstorm's not a very good card. However, Vendilion Click is good against both of them, though Flusterstorm's. So you'd have a Vendilion Click so you can have a card in both matchups. But you have a Flusterstorm so you can have a really good card in the Storm matchup. Then you'd have a Humility, because Humility is good against Show and Tell, but Humility is not good against Ant, for example.
Right.
So there's just this game of, you decide how many cards you want for each matchup, and then you make sure that your board can span that number of cards. And I think just because of the sheer volume of different combo decks in Legacy, you end up with a lot of 1-ofs in your board.
Right, and a lot of it is also ensuring that you don't have cards like Swords to Plowshares left in your deck when they're not relevant, or a card like Vindicate when it's not going to be appropriate as well.
Right, that's why you have to hit the critical number in each matchup. For example, like we said, cards that Max just doesn't want in this matchup would be 4 Swords, 2 Supreme Verdicts, a Batter Skull, and Engineered Explosives. Explosives actually may be okay. You can at least do that on 0. It doesn't do nothing. But there's at least 7 cards that he really doesn't particularly want. And so now, he needs to make sure he has 7 cards in his board that are okay to board in.
Yeah. Max Teitze is a player that serves to remind me of my age in the community. Many years ago, he was actually a JSS competitor at the store that I ran. I mean, we're talking 2001 or whatever. So Max must have been 13 or 14 years old at the time, and here both of us are still kicking around with this game.
And Max now has been a mainstay on the SCG Open, an occasional competitor on the Pro Tour as well. He certainly is known as one of the more methodical players in the game.
Yeah.
All right, and we are on to game 2.
Brian with a land-heavy hand here, 4 lands, 2 Ponders, and a Gitaxian Probe. Remember playing against Max at Grand Prix Columbus, the Legacy Grand Prix a few years back.
The Grand Prix Flash or the one after that?
The one after that. And, this was obviously, I remember him as a kid playing the JSSs. And I was like, hey, man, what are you up to? And he's like, in college in a rock band. They grow up fast.
All right, so the turn 1 Inquisition does hit the Ponder in Brian's hand. Now he's going to get to see what he's working at against And yeah, the matchup gets a lot better for Max post-board. We see his hand is Thoughtseize, Meddling Mage, Snapcaster Mage, Stoneforge Mystic, and a land. He is going to aggressively go at Brian's hand and then land a Meddling Mage.
I'm a little surprised that Brian didn't consider casting the Gitaxian Probe here. When the threat of, Meddling Mage and Cabal Therapy is there in post-board games, seems like an incentive to just get the cards out of your hand that Max knows about as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah, Brian's in a pretty tough spot here right now. He's going to face down perhaps Thoughtseize this turn, the next turn Snapcaster, Thoughtseize, then Meddling Mage.
Yeah. Max on Disruption Overload here. But again, with that basic swamp doesn't allow him to cast Meddling Mage for the time being, so Brian is at least spared of that.
Yeah, so Max actually is going to go ahead and cast the only non-disruptive card in his hand. That's going to be a Stoneforge Mystic. He has Stoneforge Finding, Sword of Fire and Ice. So once again, he finds that opening on turn 2 to get a clock down. This is the shields down moment for Brian.
But again, his hand was fairly land heavy. It would be surprising to see him really capitalize this turn, but...
Yeah, he has a lot of cantrips, which are good at sculpting the winning hand, but not good at winning when you have the opportunity. He's going to cast Ponder here. There is a slight chance he could combo this turn. He said it would start with him finding Infernal Tutor, which he does. He could play land, Lotus Petal, LED, cast Infernal Tutor, crack LED, but that's still only LED with 3. I don't think he can win from there. He's got a lot of game.
Yeah, there's a second LED in that 3-card stack, so perhaps next turn he could try to play it safe for one turn and then go next turn.
Does he have 2? Actually, he may have 2 LEDs in his hand. If he does, then he should be able to win this turn. If he has Petal, LED, LED. And yeah, he's going for it. This is a combo turn. He's going to start with Gitaxian Probe. That is spell number 2 of the turn. And this may have been an error on Max's part, thinking that this was a safe turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to see it. Okay.
Brian had nothing in his hand when he got Inquisition. Didn't even look close to being able to go off.
So there we go. Spell 2, spell 3, spell 4 are 3/0 mana artifacts. And just as described, he's going to go ahead and pay 2. This is spell 5. It's going to be Infernal Tutor with it on the stack, making 6 mana. And Max knows what's up here. Looks like it's going to be 6 black. So 2, 3, 4, 5. He needs to play 4 more spells and then a Tendrils. He has 6 black, and he's going to go ahead and get the Ad Nauseam.
Yeah. He can't go through Past in Flames right now, as most of his mana came from artifacts, not spells, and so he has to go down this road.
If those were all Dark Rituals, we'd see him take the 100% win in just finding the Past in Flames.
Again, this is the second turn of the game after Max played a discard spell on turn 1. That's what this deck is capable of doing.
Yeah, Storm is one of the less fair things you can be doing in Legacy. All right, so this is Ad Nauseam is spell number 6. And he has 1 black, Ad Nauseam with 1 black floating. He's gonna find Massacre. That one's gonna hurt for him to find. Massacre, Dark Ritual. Down to 13. Cabal Rituals, 12. Cabal Therapy is 12. Past in Flames is 8. Brian taking a huge beating from his own deck. Duress to 7. Right now, it looks like he may be bricking.
Although he is potentially assembling a hand that he can rebuild with.
Right, Ponder to 6, Tendrils to 2, and Brian's probably going to have to stop there.
Yeah. He has a black in his pool.
So he doesn't have enough mana. As he's played a land this turn, he can't actually build up to the 4 to cast Tendrils here, even if he wanted to. So he certainly can't win with this hand. So the question is, how does he want to rebuild?
Although next turn is looking very good for him.
Yeah.
As stocked as the graveyard is. He has to be very concerned about that Meddling Mage in Max's hand, of course.
Yeah.
As if that gets cast next turn, it throws everything for a loop.
Well, what he can do is he can Dark Ritual, Duress, Therapy. That's one option. That can try to just strip all the answers out of Max's hand, then just play some lands. He's going to have to Massacre because he's at 2, so Stoneforge is actually, a pretty real card here.
Yeah, I suspect that he needs to keep that Dark Ritual to go next turn.
Yeah, he's one Lotus Petal short of a win right now. He could play Lotus Petal, Massacre, Dark Ritual, Tendrils. That would be enough to do Tendrils exactly for 10.
He still has that, remember, he still has a black mana floating, so he can simply cast Cabal Therapy, name
Right.
Meddling Mage, or whatever the card is in Max hand that he's most concerned with. Keep the Dark Ritual, and then go for it next turn with Past in Flames in hand and a lot of mana.
Yeah. It's dangerous because it's some mana, but it's not actually a lot of mana. It may not be enough mana. He'll be able to get up to 5 next turn with his land drop, but there's still a ways to go on that. And that's one of the dangers with actually the post-board games with Ant is that boarding in, the deck's pretty touchy with the ad nauseum kill. You saw he boarded in cards like Massacre, and the 4 damage that Massacre deals really can't be understated. And he's going to start out, he's going to go Dark Ritual, start out with Duress. I think it's going to be Dark Ritual into Duress into Therapy. So he now sees, Thoughtseize Meddling Mage. He's going to go ahead and take the Thoughtseize. Cabal Therapy away the Meddling Mage or the Snapcaster. We'll see, it's actually the Snapcaster. I think he is hoping that Max draws the land and goes for Meddling Mage here. Or not, he's just going to go ahead and Massacre. He sees that Max can't cast the Meddling Mage. And there's the whiff. So draw for Max, no land, but he did draw a Force of Will.
So that is pretty valuable for Max here, as Brian's out of Disruption. And likely, he's actually also unlikely to be playing around the Force of Will off the top.
Yeah, he's right now just trying to go fast so that, because he realizes that Max, as soon as Max gets any land, he'll cast Meddling Mage. And the only land that doesn't contribute toward Meddling Mage is the 1 basic Swamp in Max's deck, and that one's already in play. And Max asking to read Past in Flames. And Brian's going to go ahead and start on a Brainstorm. And if you're Max, I think you're waiting to Force of Will the Past in Flames. Brainstorm draws top. Cabal Ritual. Preordain.
Cabal Ritual, pretty valuable here in terms of trying to get a Past in Flames kill set up here, as the bottleneck is really mana.
So Brian's going to go ahead and shove and get rid of that Tendrils. He's just trying to make enough mana to Past in Flames, and he'll Past in Flames. And once he does, he'll go ahead and Infernal Tutor. He's going to reset with a fetch land, but that's the last fetch land he'll get this game. He's at 2 and has really only 1 source of life gain, and that's Tendrils. Yep, so all right, down to 1. He's going to reset his deck. Doing that to maximize the value of this Ponder that's in his hand.
Unbeknownst to Brian, though, now he has to probably find another piece of hand disruption on top of everything else he's trying to do here to be able to go off.
Exactly. I mean, he is positioning to go off next turn. This turn would be that would be an ambitious one to work with. If he's committed to playing both cantrips, I actually like casting the Preordain first. He's gonna go start on Ponder. We'll see. He's gonna start on Preordain. Sees 2 lands. Guesses that he will take neither. He does that. And he finds a Brainstorm. Now we see Ponder. Another Cabal Ritual, a Jataxian Probe, a Swamp. He could take the Ritual. Yeah, Cabal Ritual's good enough here that he's just gonna take it. He put it second from top so that it's not vulnerable to disruption.
And it's funny, Brian actually couldn't take Meddling Mage out of that hand, had to take Snapcaster Mage, because simply an end of turn Snapcaster Mage would have killed him.
The Ambush Viper would have gotten him.
And they're both they're equivalently bad in that spot, but the fact that Snapcaster Mage could just be cast and Melee Mage could not was the tiebreaker.
So we see Max did hit his land there. He's going to get an Underground Sea. He now can cast Meddling Mage. The question will be, what will he name with Meddling Mage? I think between Meddling Mage and the Force of Will in Max's hand, he should be safe here. He'll presumably name Past in Flames with Meddling Mage.
It seems like the most obvious name here, based on what you saw of the ad nauseum.
Right, and yeah, Max does know Brian's hand. Yep. And Past in Flames was the name off Meddling Mage. So Brian will need a Massacre or an Echoing Truth to combo this way. He has neither. He has one Brainstorm.
And he, you know, again, also needs to find something to answer that Force of Will.
Exactly. He finds a Fetch Land, a Gitaxian Probe, and a Brainstorm. No help there. Brainstorm can allow him to retry.
Brian trying to figure some way out of this, but I think Max has one piece too many.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, right now Brian is playing just around the Meddling Mage, seeing what he's not even sure he can beat the Meddling Mage.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a surprise waiting for him if he actually manages to get around it.
So 2 mana, this is going to be a Thresholded Cabal Ritual, it looks like.
That's going to go ahead and make 5 black mana. And if you're Max, I think you're just fine. You just let all this happen.
Yeah. To your knowledge, the only thing you can really do with mana right now is cast Past in Flames, which you have locked out by Meddling Mage, so.
And he's going to go ahead and force. Well, that's pretty good. He's going to force the Cabal Ritual. If you look at the board Brian has left, it's pretty unlikely he can build a winning combo from Volcanic Island. And now Brian's brainstorming. This is just for a Massacre. It's for the second Massacre in his deck. Can that be this next card? And it is not. So we are on to game 3.
Max with Disruption Overload, and Brian getting a little unlucky with his early ad nauseum there allows Max to tie it up. So we'll be heading to game 3 momentarily. Very helpful for Brian to be on the play, of course. His games are very fast.
Yeah, as we saw there, Max on the play took his shields down on turn 2 to make a Stoneforge Mystic. He saw Brian's hand, which was really just all cantrips and a Lotus Petal.
A lot of lands too, not even all spells.
Yeah, and it was, I think it was just all cantrips. Then Brian, cantrips and Lotus Petal. Brian draws an LED. He Gitaxian probes. He Gitaxian probes into, or I think he Gitaxian probed into the LED. Then he cast a 1-mana cantrip, found an Infernal Tutor, and on turn 2 was able to cast Ad Nauseum. Yeah. So Max's hand, which, he saw no business in Brian's hand. His hand was all disruption. Even on turn 2, wasn't able to safely tap out. He needed, I think, some things to break his way to be able to get that game. And what that kind of means is that when Ant's on the play, you don't ever really get a shields down turn.
No.
And yeah, you still have to. The difficult part for the Snowman players, they still have to take one, because if they never commit and make a threat, then the Ant player will just keep drawing cards every turn. Things will get really, really dicey.
Yeah, if you think that you can beat these sort of combo decks by just having nothing but counter spells and discard spells, that's not really a winning recipe. It needs to be combined with an actual clock to force them to do something. Because with all these brainstorms and ponders and preordains, these decks are very good at sculpting winning hands even through a lot of discard spells or even through the threat of counter spells.
Yeah, if you give them enough time, they will either, in the case of Ant, they will find lots of discard. In the case of something like Omnitel, they'll go ahead and find Pact of Negations. They'll find a way to punch through whatever it is you probably have in defense. So it's really, you can play defense against them, but you need to make sure you have a clock.
Yeah.
I think that's why Delver of Secrets is actually such a powerful card right now against combo decks, because it's a 1-mana threat that you can wall up behind. Stoneforge is good at it too. It costs 2 mana, so on the draw it's a little slow to wall up.
Yeah, Delver is one of the better threats. It's another reason why you see Meddling Mage appear in a lot of these sideboards instead of, say, more counter spells.
Yeah, it's a hate card that's also a clock.
Yeah. And the threat of pressure is really critical. Of course, having some number of counterspells and thought seizes is very good as well, but you need a mixture of all this stuff. If you overload just on discard, you risk losing to cards like Leyline of Sanctity, which you randomly appear in combo sideboards. If you're all counterspells, then you risk something like Defense Grid beating you. If you're all pressure, of course, you don't have enough defense. So a smattering of all these things is the best recipe, and that's what Max is trying to present in the sideboarding games.
All right, we are on to game 3 here. There's not too much re-sideboarding that happens in this matchup, I wouldn't think. If any, Max may try to lower his curve some, but I don't know if he has many options to do that.
Yeah. I mean, he has a fair number of bad cards in this deck. He has 4 Swords to Plowshares, two copies of Supreme Verdict, and Engineered Explosives, which really only has utility against Empty the Warrens or randomly Lotus Petals that get played. He has a single Vindicate that's not much use. Umezawa's Jitte. I mean, there's a lot of fluff. True Name Nemesis is not at its best here by any stretch.
No, and the best part is that he probably keeps True Names in simply because they discard to Force of Will.
Yeah. Well, we saw him in his hand there in that second game, and it's still a clock and a blue card, so it's not nearly as bad as something like Swords to Plowshares or Supreme Verdict, which provides no utility, but these are still not the most efficient cards you can have against a deck like Ad Nauseam.
Speaking of Empty the Warrens, there is one Empty the Warrens in Brian's sideboard. I doubt he will be boarding it in. They typically board that in against decks that are overloaded on discard. Simply the best way around discard decks is to play out all your cards as fast as you can. Empty's very good at that.
So game 3 about to get underway here. Brian has brought in the Pyroclasm, it appears.
Yeah, well, he's seen Meddling Mage out of Max's deck. Pyroclasm's pretty reasonable right now. Looks like both players are on a 7, and Brian will start out with a turn 1 Gitaxian Probe. Once again, paying mana for that. And he gets to see what he's up against. His True Name Nemesis, Flusterstorm, Rest in Peace, Vendilion Click, and a pair of lands.
Another very strong opening for Max. Rest in Peace shuts off Pass in Flames as a kill, and Vendilion Click, Thoughtseize, Flusterstorm, all valuable pieces of disruption.
Right, so he's not too worried about the True Name Nemesis. That's probably not going to get cast. Vendilion Click will be the clock. He wants to try to maybe set up a kill that does not use the graveyard. An Ad Nauseam kill usually doesn't use the graveyard if you can get just a lot of mana on an Ad Nauseam.
But this is all asking a lot with the
right
amount of action that Max has in his hand.
Yeah, the Pyroclasm in Brian's hand is not at its best right now. Max didn't keep a Meddling Mage hand. Now we're going to get to see everything that Brian kept. So it looks like Max is going to go for the Thoughtseize.
It's going to be really impressive if Brian's able to pull this one off. I know it's early, we haven't even seen his hand, but this is just a lot of disruption.
All right, preordained, Brainstorm, Pyroclasm. Actually, a panda's pretty good at being resilient to Thoughtseize. There's nothing really good to take. You're just slowing him down by taking a card.
Yeah. No critical piece of the puzzle, just stuff that finds more stuff.
No, and in general, Ant is one of those decks that's pretty resistant to Thoughtseize. All its cards do more or less the same thing. So by playing Thoughtseize, you're just making them discard a card.
Some cards are more important than others, but there is one Ad Nauseam, one Past in Flames, and one Tendrils of Agony. Losing those can cut off some routes at various times, but the deck is resilient, as you mentioned.
At the draw by Brian, he preordains, sees an LED and a land, and puts both to the bottom, draws, and he finds a Brainstorm. So a lot of cantrips, but not much else.
And again, unless he's brought in his Chain of Vapors, he's going to have to go off without Past in Flames. This Rest in Peace is going to shut that door.
All right, and Scalding Tarn's going to go ahead and find a land. Looks like he's going to fire off that other preordain. He won't be able to do anything with the card he finds, but just being mana efficient at the moment.
And what's your game plan here if you're Brian? Are you just trying to
Well,
find Blind's Eye
Max-
Diamond plus Infernal
Max doesn't
Tutor?
have much of a clock. His clock's just a Vendilion click, so I want to make sure I make my land drops. I wouldn't mind getting up to 4 or 5 lands even. I would say, yeah, if you can find multiple LEDs plus a tutor, that would be great. Or if you can find a lot of dark rituals, that would be good too. You're just going to need a lot of mana. Divining Top would be pretty good. Then you can keep your relevant cards on top of the deck. You can get more deck manipulation. I would say those are the things I'm looking for. You see Brian does find and draw LED.
So do you like to hold up Flusterstorm here in Max's position, or are you just playing Rest in Peace?
Well, I'm not, it depends. So he's seen what Brian's hand was last turn. Granted, Brian just cast a pair of cantrips. His hand could really be anything. I would probably, I'd probably hold up the Flusterstorm. I think either is okay. I don't think you're gonna die next turn. He's gonna go with Stoneforge Mystic.
Okay.
So he feels very confident about the board to make this play. I guess were I playing from Max's side, I'm not sure I would have made Stoneforge at any point. I would have just gone for the Rest in Peace, then unstep V-click plan.
Well, Brian's graveyard has very little in the way of rituals. Passive Flame's not really that big of a threat currently.
Right.
Who knows what his hand looks like? He's cantripped a bunch of times. For all you know, it's flush. But based on the information Max had at the time, the Passive Flames is unlikely to do that much right now.
Well, there's also something to be said that Brian can duress the Rest in Peace now. You know, he can get it from Max's hand. I almost want to play it just so that once it's on the board, it's a pretty safe card.
Mm-hmm. Brian's picked up a Dark Ritual and a Massacre off of this Brainstorm, trying to figure out what he wants to set down.
Yeah, I think the Pyroclasm for sure is going away. Massacre is just better than Pyroclasm. He's also going to put away a fetch land, it looks like. This seems pretty decent. If he's planning to go off this turn, it's good to put back a land. Otherwise, I may even want to keep the land in Brian's situation.
Because it's 1 more mana for next turn?
It's more mana, yeah. Dark Ritual adds 2 mana to your mana pool, but a land adds 1 mana, and the mana doesn't go away. So it depends on how fast you're trying to be. There's a lot to be said for lands being better than Dark Ritual. And here is the duress that we mentioned. And Brian will get his pick between Sword of Fire Ice, Flusterstorm, and Rest in Peace. And my guess, this is a difficult one, is which one he wants to take here. I think he'll let Rest in Peace be. I would probably take the Flusterstorm. He looks like he wants Rest in Peace. It's not Sword. You're fine with Sword.
Yeah. He has to get through the disruption first.
Right.
Can win pretty easily through a clock presented by the Sword, but
he's going to take Rest in Peace, and that's fair too. Rest in Peace plays better too. It depends how fast you think you need to win. So if there's no Rest in Peace, you can win a lot more quickly with Ant. You can get these really explosive draws. So if you feel a lot of pressure from Max's deck, you should take the Rest in Peace and hope to draw the rest of your combo. If you feel like you are under no pressure, you could just take the Flusterstorm, ignore Rest in Peace, and set up for a big mana combo.
A lot of lines with this deck. For a deck that's redundant and homogenous in a lot of places, there's a lot of different paths you can pursue.
All right, and we see a fetch for Cabal Therapy. Looks like he's just going to get both of them, so the points moved here. Therapy names Flusterstorm. And Max's draw for the turn has been a Batterskull, so he has a couple of options for the equipment he wants to put in on end step here. Plays the 3rd land. His big decision is whether or not he wants to Vendilion click or play the equipment. The untapped Stoneforge seems to suggest he wants the equipment. And we are back onto Brian's turn. Drew a Preordain for the turns and see if he can set up anything. So Preordain's cast. This is the first spell of the turn. Cabal Therapy and Cabal Ritual.
And if, the instinct there is to click in the draw step, but ad nauseam primarily goes off through sorceries, and so if Max feels like something's about to happen, he can respond to one of the rituals or a cantrip by Vendilion clicking.
Well, by having a V-click in his hand, they can also play a game of chicken if Brian starts trying to ritual up to a Past in Flames. You know, if you play down to one card with your last ritual, that's going to be real bad news. He'll Vendilion click away the Past in Flames. And it looks like another duress in Brian's hand. He's going to pass the turn, it looks. And now Max has to decide what he wants to end step. Is it a V-click or is it an equipment? It's going to be an equipment. And he's going to go with Batterskull over the sword. Doing that because this way he gets to leave up Vendilion click mana. As opposed to the sword, he'd have to equip it.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, and actually gaining life matters too. Brian eventually has to go off through, or kill through Tendrils of Agony, so gaining points of life here makes it incrementally more challenging for Brian to do that.
Because of this, I was actually a little surprised when Max first got the sword. I almost was wondering whether he should have gotten the Batterskull initially so that he could always leave up his Vendilion click. As it turns out, he drew the Batterskull anyway, so he gets to go back and make this play. Max using a Braun-Duin token for the Batterskull.
Like you said, a weird game of chicken going on right now where Max wants to keep the click in hand to cause Brian to pump the brakes, but he also has to be worried about potentially having it get therapied away, potentially giving Brian a lot of draws, as potentially not killing him as fast as he could if he was using his mana on other things. So a lot of variables to consider right now.
Right,
Max still just holding up.
Yeah, swing for 5 puts Brian down to 13. Max is up to 21. Turn is passed back to Brian, and he has found an Infernal Tutor.
But this again is where that threat of Vendilion click is so strong.
Yeah, well, if he tries to ritual, well, he can. If he plays this one might be okay. If he plays LED, Max has to click in response to LED. Otherwise, Brian can actually get his whole hand out. He can play the LED. He can cast the Infernal Tutor, and then with the Infernal Tutor on the stack, he can blow all his rituals. So certainly a different way to do it, but one that works.
Yeah.
And my guess is that that's how he'll play it. The question is whether he has enough mana when he does that. He has, yeah. So he's going to start on Lion's Eye Diamond. We'll see if Max clicks in response to Lion's Eye Diamond. This is the one chance that Max has to click before the Infernal Tutor is going to go off. Now Brian has 2 sorcery speed cards in his hand. So after playing the first, he has to play the LED and hope that he gets to keep the tutor. And from Max's side, it's not clear that Brian has an Infernal Tutor. There's a lot to be said for Brian just running out LED at any point.
Yeah. So he can, in this sequence that you're describing, play Infernal Tutor in response.
Yeah. Respond to his own spell.
In response to the Infernal Tutor, ritual a bunch of times, then sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond.
Right.
And then Vendilion Click has
lost its window, really.
Yeah.
And I don't think the ruse is going to work. I think with the LED on the stack, we're going to see Vendilion Click. If so, it's a heads-up play for Max.
Yeah. Doing a very good job of identifying what his moment was. I think there's a lot of players in that spot that would just say, "Oh, okay, he's still not ready to go off."
It's just an LED. Yeah. I'll wait until he's going off, then I'll click him. All right, and Vendilion Click. And now he gets to see, it would have been Dark Ritual, Duress, Infernal Tutor, and Massacre. And you'd think that the Infernal Tutor is going to get taken here, almost certainly. And with Vendilion Click, there's always a chance that just Brian draws another copy of the card or something else that's equally relevant.
And there's also a lot of cantrips in this deck that give him redraws as well.
Yeah, but he found none of them. He found Tropical Island. And now Brian has to reload. It looks like he's going to Duress here, possibly Massacre, and then that will be it. Duress takes Sword of Fire Ice, Max with just a pair of True Name Nemesis. And Brian, just with a Ritual, a land, and a Massacre, he's gonna looks like he's gonna Massacre 4 power off Max's board.
Yeah, it's just an issue of if it's actually changing the clock at all, which it does.
Buys him 1 turn.
Yeah.
Right now, Max had a 2-turn clock. Now he has a 3-turn clock once a True Name joins the board. Brian did not play the land in case he draws a Brainstorm. But Max continues. He goes up to 24 with the Batter Skull. He's going to follow it up with a True Name Nemesis. Pass back the turn. He has no more disruption. Brian's challenge is to, in 2 turns, combo off. Island will certainly not help him do it.
But he has a lot of mana and can get to Hellbent here, so.
Yeah, one Infernal Tutor could be enough. We'll see though. Brian down to 2. Max is up to 28. This Brian can't Ad Nauseam from here either. His life total pretty important.
Yeah, at this point we're looking at 13 additional spells on top of, but that is certainly doable.
A good turn. And Ponder will be spell number 1 of the turn. He finds
an Infernal
Tutor. All right, that's the card he's going to have to take. You know, you're not entirely sure what you're going to get with it yet, but you know that's the card you need. So he has 6 mana available to him. He has 8 mana with Dark Ritual, 9 mana with his land for the turn. So after, he will have an Infernal Tutor and 7 floating here. And he doesn't even have to use the LED. I mean, he will use the LED. He doesn't have to, because he actually is going to just play out his whole hand. But that said, he still probably wants to.
Brian doing the math here, but does he think he has to actually just find Past in Flames? Is mana that big of a bottleneck right now?
Well, it's more of how is he going to get this many, how is he going to get enough spells without, you know, Ad Nauseam is the easy answer, but he really can't do that. I would think it does have to be Past in Flames.
Yeah, it's the question of, is the 2 mana the bottleneck here? All right, he's keeping.
Spell 1. Spell 2 is Dark Ritual. Now he has 3 black. And with that on the stack, now we're going to see 2 of the black be spent to cast the 3rd spell. That's going to be Infernal Tutor. The question is whether or not he sacks the LED now. He most likely does.
And presumably he also needs to leave some blue mana available because this sequence does require him to cantrip out of his graveyard.
Yes, he wants to maximize on blue mana.
Given the number of rituals there, I don't think he has the ability to simply ritual again, Infernal Tutor again, and find tendrils.
No, he needs to storm up to 15 to 14 spells. So he's going to sack the LED. We'll see what color it's for. All right, Lions of Diamond was on red. That's going to set up for Past in Flames. He is a little choked on mana. I do think he probably didn't want to tap the Underground Sea for the ritual. He probably wanted to tap the Badlands there. It may not matter either way. Yeah. He does find
he still has a black mana to initiate all of his rituals, and he has blue mana to cantrip with. So he has that part of it covered.
Right. So he's going to use the black in his pool, I think, and the 3 red to cast Past in Flames. That's spell number 4. I'm not sure what that 3 is out on the table. That may be a...
That might be, are they tracking spells possibly?
So That is the 5th spell of the turn. His Dark Ritual out of his graveyard.
All right, now Brian gonna ponder. Still with 3 black floating.
Yeah, I think their storm count die is 1 too small right now. So Ponder is going to be spell 6.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. Yep, they just added 2 on the Ponder. So remember, he needs to get that die up to 13 and still have 4 mana left. So he's going to need more rituals. He is running dangerously low on non-black mana.
He has found a lot of rituals off of that ponder that he could keep if he wants to.
Yeah, we see LED. We see Cabal Ritual. I think he just wants the LED. It's additional blue mana, which is probably more important than anything else here.
Yeah.
All right, spell 7 is Lion's Eye Diamond. And, you know, I think he's going to get here. It's looking good for him.
Yeah, Lion's Eye Diamond, the fact that it frees up so many cantrips in his graveyard is really valuable right now.
Well, it's just Black Lotus, right? He has no hand. And, all right, so now he has 3 blue, 3 black. LED enters the graveyard. And he's going to use a blue for Brainstorm. That's spell number 8.
Yeah, this is looking really promising for Brian now.
You know, he started on Brainstorm as opposed to playing Preordain there. He's going to go ahead. I think he may just have the win. He's going to go with Dark Ritual. That's spell number 9. Maybe that's all he needed. Dark Ritual, remember, does not have flashback. Yep, and Max is pointing that out. Hey, that the LED and Dark Ritual don't have flashback. They were cast after the Past and Flames had resolved. That's why they're splitting up the graveyard into multiple graveyards. Spell number 10 is going to be the Preordain. Brian's still with 1 blue left. He sees the Ritual and the Swamp. He still wants the Ritual. He's going to go ahead and draw that.
It's just something that he can cast for sure and lets him keep his hand empty. It's all he's looking for right now.
Spell number 11 is the Ritual. Yeah, he just wants free spells. Spells that make more mana than they cost. It says 8 black, 1 blue left. He needs to find 2 more spells. And now, is the Tendrils is not in his yard yet, I don't believe.
Correct, but he does still have an Infernal
Infernal in the yard. All right. And yeah, he definitely has it now. Spell 12 is going to be Cabal Therapy. He's going to name probably Force of Will, or True Name Nemesis. The other cards say Stoneforge, so no help there.
I think he's pretty confident Max doesn't have Force of Will at this juncture.
Yeah. Casts Massacre out of the graveyard for 0. That's spell 13. Now all he needs to do is find the Tendrils of Agony, and that should do it. I think they're checking whether or not he can actually alternate cast the Massacre out of the graveyard.
Yeah.
Which he should be able to. Well, actually, flashback. I don't know how the rules on flashback works. Flashback might mean you can't alternate cast them. The flashback cost is equal to its converted mana cost.
Sure.
I would have to ask on that one.
Yeah, I would assume so. It's probably the same as Snapcaster, right? It's the same deal.
Yeah, you can alternate cast out of the graveyard, or you cannot.
You cannot.
All right.
You can pay equal to mana cost.
All right. So now he still has enough mana that he's going to go ahead and Infernal Tutor. That's spell number 14. This is going to be his 15th spell as long as he shows the Tendrils. And there it is, Tendrils. 415, that will drain Max for 30, and Braun-Duin, 2 games to 1, takes down
Pretty
Max
impressive. That was certainly not an easy match for Brian to slog through there. A lot of complicated operations, a lot of hate to get through. That was also turn 1 of extra time, so by no means